So you're a content marketing legend, and I'd say your content follows me on every platform. I used to see you on Instagram quite a lot, and now you're also on LinkedIn, nailing the algorithm, I guess. Wanted to chat to you about how obviously you've grown your personal brand, but also transitioned to becoming an educator. Um, and I thought maybe we could start just with your journey. Like, how did you get into marketing?
When it comes down to marketing, I always knew that I wanted to be in business. I just didn't really know what sort of business I wanted to go into. And everything that I was playing around with since a young age didn't really stick with me. I found it boring after a few months. So I started looking around and I discovered digital marketing, and that was quite easy to get into. It was back in 2014. I was still a teenager. So what I wanted to do was first and foremost become a sponge for information. So I consumed everything when it comes down to marketing. I started listening to audiobooks. I read everything by Seth Godin. I watched all the TED Talks. And in the span of 1 year, I had read around 100 books. I was reading on average 2 books per week, super dedicated, multiple hours per day, just consuming, consuming, consuming. And I wouldn't say it was useless, but I didn't really move. So the next year, I remember it vividly on January 1st, after dedicating, I would say, hundreds of hours in the span of that 1 year, just consuming and not really moving anywhere. I decided to cut back on all the consumption and go massively into implementation, because I realized that all of that consumption of content was actually a procrastination mechanism for me to avoid failure. I was consuming information thinking that I was productive, but essentially I was just keeping myself busy in order to avoid actually putting myself out there, actually implementing on what I was learning and potentially failing with it. So the next year, 2015, I made the massive shift and I said, okay, let me cut and reduce all the information that I consume by 10x, but actually let me start implementing everything. So I started creating Instagram pages based on my different interests. I started looking into the algorithm. I started running ads. I started dabbling into copywriting, graphic design. And I do believe that all of these different skill sets, because they were so vastly different, made marketing interesting for me. Because one day I could be spending hours designing something, the next day I could be writing copy, and all of that was super captivating for me. So before I really knew what I was happening, I was able to grow a few of my pages quite significantly in 2015, and that really started sparking ideas for me because I was surrounding myself with other really active people, that I could actually start doing this and start offering it to other people. So in 2015, it really marked the start of my freelancing journey. From that point onwards, a few years had passed. I was really becoming more and more successful as a freelancer, working with huge corporations. And then I actually built my own agency, started hiring my employees. And in 2020, 5 years after I
Wow.
began working as a freelancer, now that I had a lot of experience under my belt, I actually opened up my personal brand, because for me, education and sharing with others has always been a passion. Ever since I was in school, I remember vividly I was really good in a few select subjects. Math was one of them. So I started teaching math and programming to all of my classmates, and that was so fulfilling to me. And after reaping success with my agency, after being really cash free, so I didn't really have money worries at that moment, I started really seeking something else that was pushing, that would push me. And I also do believe that that's a key part of what made my social media so successful, the fact that I didn't really do it for the money. I knew that I didn't really need social media to work for me. I did it because I had an intrinsic need and wish to pave the way for other people and to give back. And that really paid huge dividends in the long term, because the irony was, because I wasn't chasing money, because I wasn't really dependent on my social media to generate money, it actually was super easy for me to generate conversions. So that's my whole story in the last decade, pretty much in 5 to 10 minutes. And again, I do want to showcase to people that you do not have to have formal education in marketing. My degree is in computer science. You do not need to spend thousands on courses. You can educate yourself, especially nowadays, because back in 2015, there weren't really that many sources of information about digital marketing and specifically social media marketing. And the thing about trying to educate yourself about social media and digital marketing in general is that it changes so rapidly. So if you're reading a book that's written a few years ago and it's not based on some foundational either principles in data or principles in human psychology, that book is already worthless. So you might as well, again, spend more time executing on some foundational lessons which you can find in human psychology and data analytics, and then learn these lessons by yourself. I have found that that's much more successful than spend hundreds or thousands on courses or books that may not be even relevant.
Hey, wait, but you have your own course, so you can say that.
No, I can absolutely say that. And one of the reasons that I released my course now, 5 years after I actually began my personal brand, was because I have so much experience with courses. I actually did performance marketing and organic marketing in the first 10 years of my career, specifically for info products. So those are the people that I work with the most, and those are the people that release courses the most. So I saw all of the data and I knew that if I would release a course myself, it would have to be totally different, because the current reality is that only 3 to 12% of courses are actually finished. And that's not really a worthwhile engagement for both parties. The person that's selling the course, because he's going to run out and burn out his audience, and then the person buying the course, because he's not essentially going to get any value, and thus he's not really going to have a good taste in his mouth afterwards. And that's something I found out in the last few years after I started my personal branding and started dabbling into consultations more and more. I've done more than 1,000 consultations at this point, and many of them have been from people that have been purchasing courses the same way that I have been consuming books back in the day. They were consuming, sometimes finishing the course if they were working, but most of the times just not getting the results that they want, getting frustrated and then quitting. And they were just at a point in which they couldn't really figure out social media. They were getting really frustrated by it and wouldn't be able to find the solutions.
I feel like to this day, like, unless you keep your content or your course just completely on point and yourself like consume the right content to perfect the class, it's going to be obsolete again in like 3 months, 6 months.
That's a huge factor. Another really big factor is understanding that most courses are created by marketers who are not educators, and they're focusing mostly on sales rather than teaching people. That's a huge part of the reality that we live in. And then another really byproduct of that is the fact that most people that create courses don't really understand how learning happens. Because the reality is we do not live in 15th century anymore, in which books were only available to hyper-wealthy individuals. Information is so wildly available nowadays, it literally can be created from thin air. So what we need to do is stop focusing on the tip of the iceberg, aka information, and start focusing on the learning which happens below the surface, which is done by consuming information which is relevant for the time being, applying that information, generating some results, analyzing those results, and adapting. That's the whole process that happens below the iceberg, and that's why I think that courses that are combined with communities and gamification are really what is going to be pushing the info product world forwards. Platforms such as School are doing a great job paving the way. I personally built out my course completely custom. So we created a ton of systems from scratch, more than 6,000 lines of code, dozens of different systems and gamifications intertwined into it in order to first get people to finish the course, because that's the main hurdle for people. Again, only around 3 to 12% of courses are finished. Secondly, get people to apply the course, because information by itself is useless unless you actually take action on it. And then thirdly, get people to win with the course, share it in the community, and create that cycle in which people are winning, motivating others, more people are winning, and that cycle essentially will...
So what's your completion rate?
At the moment, I launched the course last week, and we already
Yeah.
have a 13% completion rate, which beats the
Uh,
industry standard. And again, this is a course which is 1 week old.
yeah. Awesome. I wanted to just go back to 2014 because I found what you said really interesting, that you've consumed a year worth of content. And I love that you said it like it's free, it's out there, just like
Absolutely.
go and forge through it. Out of that entire year, was there anything that you decided to use, like in terms of like strategies or tactics? What was the most useful thing that you actually utilized in
Yep.
2015 when you started?
For me, the most useful thing was gaining clarity. Clarity is incredibly underrated. Most people procrastinate on whatever they set out to do in life just because they cannot really understand what are the building blocks behind it. In order to take content creation just as an example, a single post on any social media platform essentially comes down to a few building blocks. The first one is the idea. You need to understand how you're going to be hooking people in the post. You need to understand how you're going to be packaging the post in terms of your format. Is it going to be a storytelling post? Is it going to be a listicle? Is it going to be a carousel? Is it going to be a video? Whatever it is, you need to gain intimate clarity on that foundational step. From that point onwards, again, no matter which social media platform you're creating content for, no matter the platform, the format, you are creating some sort of copy. You need either a script for your videos, or you need the information that's actually going to be presented in whatever graphic. It doesn't matter if it's a diagram or a carousel. So the second element is the copy. The third element is going to be the graphical visualization of the information. Again, no matter if it's a video or a carousel, you're either going to be utilizing graphic design, or you're going to be recording a video and editing that video. That's the execution. And then you have things such as scheduling. Depending on the platform, you need to take into consideration what sort of size you need to be utilizing. Does the caption matter? How many lines of the captions are visible? Do you need hashtags? Do you not need hashtags? But understanding of these building blocks of what makes a single post will enable you to then create content so much more effectively, because you can be mindful of all of these building blocks as you go through them. You can see where the bottlenecks are, you can delegate them, or you can double down on them, and you can make sure that you become more and more efficient by noticing where your gaps are. There is a really useful exercise on this topic after you have understood again
Yeah.
the building blocks. It's called the Eisenhower matrix. It's essentially a diagram that is broken down by two axes, x and the y axis, and it gives you 4 quadrants. So you can visualize it, and again, each quadrant will represent a specific activity that you're going to be doing with the task. You're either going to be delegating the task, you're either going to be removing the task entirely, you're going to be doing it, but it's not a priority, or you're going to be doing it as soon as possible. So after you gain clarity on what it is that you actually have to do, you can place each of these different elements in each of these quadrants and say graphic design takes too much time, or video editing takes too much time, so I'm actually going to delegate that. Or I can actually batch generate my ideas. I don't have to do them daily, so I'm going to remove daily ideas.
Yeah. In terms of you mentioned, of course, now you have a team, but when you were first starting out, if you wanted to delegate a task, would you like contact a freelancer, or did you just do everything yourself?
Yep. I was doing everything myself until the moment I had around 250,000 followers. And keep in mind, I already had the successful agency. I had the processes. I could delegate if I want to. But I was such a control freak, honestly. My personal brand is my baby, and I see this with quite a few people. It's much easier to do things for other people rather than yourself. So there are so many experienced marketers that crush it when it comes down to their client work, and the moment they have to start working on their brand, they freeze. So it was quite the same journey with myself, and I had to go through a difficult process of letting go and accepting the fact that someone else doing the job at 80 or 90% and saving me the hassle of doing it entirely is much better than me perfecting everything. I like to call myself a recovering perfectionist. So it was a tough journey, but for the first year and a half, 2 years, I was doing everything: creating the post, posting the ad, replying to thousands of comments, and then replying to every single GM, and still managing my business.
Wow.
And still managing all of the other ventures that I was invested in. I wouldn't say it was easy on my health. I went through massive burnouts, but it definitely taught me.
When you, I can't believe that replying to every DM before automation, like
Yep.
that's just,
Yeah. Back in the day, GM
we're
automation and
so
comment
spoiled.
automation wasn't really a thing when I started out with my Instagram. And even if it was, I still reply to a ton of comments. I still reply to a ton of DMs, even though I receive more than 15,000 of them only on Instagram. And LinkedIn is actually becoming a huge, huge burden when it comes down to community management as well. But again,
Oh.
I do believe that it's incredibly important for creators to remember where they came from and to keep
Yeah.
in touch with the communities that they've built. A lot of big creators, once they scale, they start delegating and they start falling victim of the trap that they forget what their audience actually sounds like. So they start creating content which doesn't really resonate with them. So for me,
I wanted to jump back just a little bit. You mentioned you grew to 50K, and at that point you started, okay, I need to delegate.
yeah,
But in terms of growing that to 50K and then to 500K and above, were there any other strategies that you could share that you leverage to grow your brand? So the first one is clarity and that structure, but
absolutely.
anything else?
Absolutely. I look at success on any social media platform the same way. It comes down to two foundational elements. You need traffic and you need conversions. This is a lesson that I learned back in the performance marketing days. And when I start talking to people about organic, they say, duh, obviously I need these two things, but they don't, again, understand them at a foundational level. Let's take Instagram, for example. If in order to grow your Instagram profile, you inherently need two things: people to actually see your profile and people to actually decide to click the button on your Instagram profile. So once you know that these are your two main KPIs, you can now start tracking them on weekly or even daily basis, depending on the amount of traffic that you're generating. And you can start taking action to generate either more traffic, aka people visiting your profile, or in order to improve your conversion rate. And that makes organic growth, which usually is a huge gamble, something that's actually predictable. So for me, when it comes down to Instagram, what I am aiming to accomplish is at least a 30 to 35% conversion rate. That means that for every 10 people that visit my profile, at least 3 become followers. And then I want to maintain at least 70 to 80% follow rate. So I don't want people to unfollow me because all that hard work that I have done will go to waste.
Yeah.
So again, the metrics that you need to be tracking are what are the amount of profile visits that you're generating, what are the amount of people that are following you from these profile visits, and what are the amount of people which are unfollowing you from these follows. So if you look at it as a funnel, at the top of the funnel you have profile visits, middle of the funnel.
Then in terms of, okay, so yes, you're looking at visits and conversions, so you're focusing on your goals and then obviously optimizing the content based on these goals. But I find it like a lot of people will hear this, and they're like, okay, but there must be like other tactics that are more practical that could
Oh,
do like,
absolutely, absolutely. So this is the foundation. This is what everyone needs to understand. And the moment they understand that, the two first natural questions are: how do I generate more traffic? How do I generate a higher top of the funnel? And then how do I make sure that the people who actually see my profile are following me? So the first thing that they need to realize is what sort of problem do they have? Do they have a traffic problem or do they have a conversion problem? These are the
right.
two main ones. Most people have a traffic problem. Most people are just not getting enough visibility. And there are a number of reasons why that's happening. So, for example, at the time of recording this, which is late August 2024, Instagram reach is at an all-time low. And that's because growth cycles and it's summer. There are, again, a lot of reasons for why that's happening. So you first need to understand that there may be market-wide reasoning behind the lack of success. Then the other thing you need to understand is that a vast amount of your traffic is going to be generated through your content. I would say 80% of all traffic that you're going to be receiving on your profile is going to be content related. Either by your content getting picked up by the explore page and pushed there, home recommendations, hashtags, the Reels tab, doesn't matter. Your content is pushing traffic. You stop making content, traffic stops. So content related optimization is probably the most important thing that you can do if you want to generate reach. Other things that you can do if you want to generate reach, no matter the platform, engagement is massive. I would say that engagement is even more important on platforms such as LinkedIn and Threads than Instagram. But for small profiles, engagement is incredibly powerful because it can generate consistent reach. You cannot really control how much reach your Instagram carousels or reels are going to get, but you can control how much engagement on other profiles you're putting out, and thus how much engagement you are going to be receiving yourself. So again, after you identify what type of problem you have, if you have a traffic problem, 80% of the solutions are going to be content related. The other solutions can be things such as collaborations, engagement, boosting posts, which if done correctly can be powerful, shout outs, which again, if done correctly, can be powerful, curation pages, which again, with a huge asterisk, they need to be done correctly in order to be effective. There are a lot of traffic sources. And then if you have a conversion problem, it's either because your profile is not optimized, your content is not optimized, or your traffic quality is lacking.
And then, on how many platforms are you focused right now on growing your brand?
4. So Instagram is the main platform. I always recommend to people find a hub for all of your social media presence. Find a platform that you master first. From that point,
sorry, I just realized that I'm not in the newsletter. Okay, I need to get on it. Is there kind of, in your mind, is there like completely different tactics that work for different channels, or is it more or less the same?
I would say that social media marketing in general is 80% focused on psychology and 20% focused on technology. Pretty much the audience is going to resonate with the same problems on all platforms, and thus your content is going to foundationally be the same on all platforms. There are some really small tweaks that you have to keep in mind, though. I could give a few examples. For example, when it comes down to captions, Instagram is the only platform in which captions matter for short form vertical video content. So your Instagram Reels actually work really well with your Instagram captions. But you take a video post that is caption dependent and you post it on Pinterest, on YouTube, on TikTok, and you're not going to see the same results. Captions are one example. The amount of hashtags that you need to be utilizing also differs based on specific platforms. On TikTok, for example, hashtags don't really matter. On Instagram, they have some value, but mostly for search engine optimization rather than the old way that hashtags work. On LinkedIn, again, 50-50. So there are some really small differences between the platforms, but the reality is if you create great content, which is what most people should be focusing on.
I know you mentioned Seth Godin. Are there any books on psychology that have helped you?
A few great ones. Contagious, Biology, so bi, and then as anything which is more focused on role psychology without any marketing interception is going to be powerful. How to influence people and win friends, for example, that's a staple. So I would say that anything related to that, and then anything related to Ogilvy, I would highly recommend as well. Is one of the best copywriters past our era.
He's one of my favorites.
He's one of my favorites as well.
He's the reason why I went to work at Ogilvy early in my days.
Well, I wish I had that opportunity as well. He was the first book that I read, and he is still one of the authors that I reread every single year. There is another really good book, which is a little bit more niche. It's for people who have agencies and who have creative businesses. It's called Win Without Pitching Manifesto. That's a really, really solid book if you have any sort of creative business.
Awesome. I'm going to check those out.
Absolutely.
Now, I wanted to get kind of talk a little bit about failures. So obviously there's a lot of success, but you've had, I'm sure, like years of trying just, to get there and try everything under the sun. What are some of the, maybe more recently, what are some of the things that you've tried and just did not work?
Absolutely. A few things. So as you mentioned, I recently released a paid product course, and this course has been in the working for 10 months. I first got the idea for gamification and how to build out. It's called the Content Creation Dojo. So we have essentially belts that you earn through as you develop as a content marketer, and you begin as a white belt, and the goal is to get the black belt. So there are a ton of systems. There are a ton of systems that we worked on, and again, the goal is just to get more people to finish, get more people to apply. But after the course had been done in early May, I started testing it, beta tested the hell out of it. I got 50 people to go through all the modules, go through all the systems. I was really worried that people may get confused because there's a lot. And I was super happy with the feedback. With small changes, we were ready to launch in June. And I had hired again an agency, which I didn't really want to utilize my connections. I wanted to hire someone that didn't really know who I was, because this was a project that I worked so hard on for so long. I didn't want it to get leaked. I hired an agency back in June, and they promised website, landing page, everything would be done by July. So I said, perfect, let it get done by July. In July, I'll start gathering people for the waitlist. I'll launch in August. Everything would be perfect. So June rolls and I submit everything. Super happy, super pumped. I can already visualize the success of the dojo. Really happy with it. July rolls and I'm expecting the website to be done. I'm messaging these people. They say yes, a few more days. Everything is looking good. They submit visualizations. I'm super ecstatic and happy with how everything looks. August rolls in. I'm already ready to launch. I have 2,000 people in my waitlist. I'm super psyched. People are waiting. People are messaging me. I did a whole campaign showcasing how I raised the course because it took me 9 months to produce it. So it was my content pregnancy. It was great. People were hyped. People were messaging me. When was the baby coming out? I would say a few more days, no worries. August 14. So we're already a month and a half later than the original date that these freelancers should have delivered the website, and the website is still not ready. At this point, I'm sweating bullets for days. I remember not really being able to sleep, waking up in the middle of the night and visualizing that these people had actually messaged me and the website is ready and they're just waiting on me, and opening my phone and checking, and again, it wasn't really radiant. I had already started the waitlist. I had already started the hype building campaigns. The email sequences were waiting on me. And at that moment, I realized I fucked up. Apologies for swearing. I had made the promise that I couldn't really keep up, and it's 100% my fault. Yes, I had hired these people. They didn't really keep their promise, but I had to do my homework. I had to vet them better. I had to push them more. Whatever it is, I could have controlled this outcome and not really created false expectations in my audience. So that goes to show that after doing hundreds of successful launches for other people, the person that had spent so much time planning everything and obsessing over every single little detail. Again, I literally beta tested this with 50 different people. I tested everything, every single piece of feedback. And then I still really screwed up big time. So my launch ended up being delayed with 2 days. I remember vividly, I had emailed 2,000 people saying tomorrow is the day, save it in your calendar. And I was working from 2 a.m. that night to 9:30 p.m. the following night, just trying to deliver on that promise, and I couldn't. So as a last resort, me and my soon-to-be wife, we just did a quick photo shoot. I wrote on a red cardboard that I'm sorry, and sometimes social media is more about survival than thriving. And I explained to everyone that was having these expectations that I just couldn't deliver, and there's nothing I can do about it. Luckily for me, community was super ecstatic. They were incredibly supportive. To this day, I still believe that it was the fact that Mercury was retrograde, and again, it was screwing up with communication and technology. So I'm definitely not launching anything at that moment. But again, I was able to launch later. Everything was fine. you cannot really A/B test these things, so I will never know how much more successful it could have been if it had launched properly. But I'm super happy with the results. We have more than 100 people in the community. Everyone is incredibly supportive. I couldn't be happier with the results. But again, still, after reaching and doing so much for others, I screwed up my own launch and in a massive way, because for me, the most important thing about being on social media and building a brand is building out expectations and then actually delivering on them. Because so many people nowadays, they go for all the trends, they go for the quickest way to grow a brand, and in the process they build out a lot of expectations, they generate a lot and make a lot of promises, and end up not really being able to deliver. And that has been the number one thing that I wanted to avoid the whole time. So that's definitely a recent major failure on my end, that good lesson for myself and for others.
I could feel the story. I was like, sweating here with you,
It,
living through it.
yeah, honestly, it was such a learning experience as a person as well, because at that moment, after I had worked endlessly for a few nights just trying to fix everything and deliver on time, I remember going out to throw out my trash, and just looking around me and seeing people and seeing how cars were passing by, people were honking, people were crossing the street, and thinking to myself, none of these people know about this. None of these people really care about the fact that I just had the worst few days of my life. And that was such a waking moment, because I realized that no matter what happens, the world is still going to keep going forwards. The world is still going to keep spinning. And oftentimes that's a massive reminder that all of us need, that no matter how big our screw up is now, chances are in a few weeks nobody is going to remember it. So it really did put things into perspective, and especially with everything going on in the world around us, me delaying my launch for 48 hours is nothing compared to the pain and struggles that people have. So I'm blessed to be.
You reminded me, somebody the other day told me there was some feedback that was left about one of the products that I have, and I was just so focused on this one negative comment. And my husband basically told me, it's like, well, just close your laptop and go outside for a walk. I'm like, oh my God. I was like, hey, maybe I will. And it really, really helped get out of your
head.
I get out of your head. That's it. I was focused on all the wrong things versus, you know what, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to make it good. I just need to walk.
Absolutely. I do think that sometimes we absolutely need to get out of our own way. And that's why I say that success on social media is a lot more about psychology, and not only the psychology of understanding your audience, but also your own. Because the reality is that the most underrated skill for content creators is mental fortitude. And that's why I say that information is just the tip of the iceberg. If you really want to succeed, the most powerful asset is developing your mindset, developing yourself as a person, becoming the type of person that creates good content and gets people to follow him, and surrounding yourself with other people. I still have friends to this day that I had started my content creation journey with in the beginning 5 years ago, that I'm real life friends with. We travel together, we go to conferences together, and these friendships, they keep us going. Because when shit hits the fan, again, apologize for swearing, but when Instagram is in such a painstaking situation for the last 2 months and reach is at an all-time low, having these people support you makes all the difference. And that's something which I wanted to create in the Content Creation Dojo, just having a community of people.
First of all, I love that you're traveling with friends to all these conferences. That actually sounds so nice.
Yeah, it's a dream come true. It's a dream come true, honestly.
I also have a theory. I don't know how you feel about it, but maybe Instagram sales are down and Meta just needs to rake in some budget. So they're like, you know what, everybody's reach is down for a month.
Honestly, I don't think that they want to do this. I don't really think that they want to piss off their creators after spending years building out this creator base and paying. If you think about it, they paid out hundreds of millions in creator bonuses to get more people to create content. Now, reach on all social media platforms is all about supply and demand. The same way that the economy works on supply and demand. You have supply of content and demand of content. The reality is that this supply and demand cycles is in cycles. There are going to be times in which there's a lot of demand and there's very little supply of content, and that's usually after a period like this, a massive drought in which creators say, "Oh, it's not worth it for me to create content," so they leave the platforms in droves. Which, when the demand is the same or even increases, which happens because at the moment people are on vacation massively. It's the summer, people are not being on their phones, consumption of social media platforms is being reduced massively, so demand of content is actually lower. Supply of content hasn't really changed that much, but after a slow period it drops as well. And then when people come back on these platforms in September, in October, when people start spending the holiday season, when it gets cold outside and people stay inside, consuming more content, demand increases, and the people who have been consistent, the content creators that have been giving to these social media platforms a good supply of content, they're going to be the ones rewarded. And I've seen this cycle ever since I began on Instagram. I actually have a post from 2020 documenting this cycle, and it repeats every single year. And I post it every single year.
Oh my God.
So again, there is supply and demand. Understand that, be patient, repurpose on other social media platforms. I have empire, not a social media kingdom.
Love it. Love it. Reference to Rome. So, actually, I have like two more questions that I'm like burning to ask. But
Absolutely.
so obviously a lot of people come to you to just learn from you, right? Not just from your classes, but just from all of your content. But who do you go to learn from?
That's a great question. I have a habit in which every single week I spend around, let's say, an hour and a half broken down into daily tasks, just doing competitive benchmarking. So I have a list of 5 to 15 creators, which aren't necessarily all in my niche. I actually have a lot of creators in all types of different niches because marketing is so interesting. Again, design, editing, copywriting, it's all combined. So I do competitive benchmarking on great creators on many platforms from LinkedIn. Jasmine Alec on LinkedIn is my favorite. Through YouTube, there are a few great designers. Brandon is one of the great designers. Design Theory on YouTube is also phenomenal. Through Instagram, Robbie Murray is one of my students, and Jamie Brindle, again, one of my students. Both of them are really great content creators. Stephen Melroy is a phenomenal Instagram creator as well. So what I do is I pick great creators, no matter the niche, no matter the platform, and I spend around 15 to 20 minutes every single day just studying their content and reverse engineering it. That's the best thing that anyone can do when it comes down to improving their social media. Just do competitive benchmarking, and not only on direct competitors, but on great content creators in general. I recently found another content creator which is absolutely crushing it on Instagram. Her name is Sarah Snow. Again, after the recording is over, you can message me and I can send you all of the links to these creator profiles. We can include them in the notes. But again,
that'd be awesome.
Doing competitive benchmarking has been a really great way for me to keep a touch on my direct competitors and the communities that I'm interested in. I always read the comments on the successful posts that I find because I find them quite revealing. And then just look.
That is such a good reminder, and thank you, because I was chatting to my content creator and all we were doing is just looking at one industry. I'm like, okay, let's re-engineer it. But it's literally light bulb moment. Going to somebody completely different in a different industry will help you create fresh content that's not just copy paste.
Exactly. Otherwise, it becomes a huge echo chamber, and your content can never really break free. Really great book on innovation. I'm not entirely sure what the name was. I have to dig into it. But it basically was surrounded by the premise that innovation is born from combination. So if you want to create something new and innovative, the best way to do it is by combining different elements from different places. And the analogy that it gave was universities that combine engineering and art departments in one place. And they have found that innovation in these universities is way higher than normal ones. So for me, finding these different creators who have mastered their craft in a lot of different markets, and then learning and taking lessons and maybe combining a few of them to create something new has been the way that I have created all of my great ideas on content principles. So, for example, when I was creating the course that I have worked for in the last 10 months, what I did was I took some ideas from school and the way that they created their leaderboards. So we have leaderboards.
Yeah.
I took some ideas from martial arts because I train jujutsu. So I took the whole belt system and integrated that so you can progress as a content creator. I took some lessons from Duolingo because I'm studying Finnish. My wife is half Finnish, half Bulgarian. So I'm studying Finnish, and I saw how they were doing these challenges. I saw how they were doing these quizzes. So we integrated that in the dojo. So again, taking a lot of things new.
Harry, you would have loved working at Ogilvy because literally all you're describing is what all of the creatives used to do, just like idea mash
Mm-hmm.
in another lifetime.
Absolutely. Swipe files are also really massive source of inspiration for me. And there's swipe files for pretty much anything. I obviously copywriting, that's where swipe files were born. But there's so many swipe files for design inspiration, YouTube thumbnails, ads. So I recently found an AI tool called Swapify. And again, it's literally just a huge swipe file of great ad creatives and ad copy. And what they do was they had an internal ranking because everything is handpicked. So they give it ranking based on ad creative score or copy creative score. And you can essentially filter that out. You can filter out based on different angles. And it's a great way to just see different industries, one next to each other. And maybe you see two great ads and think, oh, I can combine that. So again, swipe files are my go-to, and I have to think that it's so valuable.
That is so useful. Thank you for that tip. I'm definitely checking it out.
Absolutely.
Now, I wanted to finish off actually talking about your students. Just would you be okay to share? I know you already mentioned two of your students that you even find inspiration from them, but in terms of just some successful stories about a student has come in with a certain goal and their achievements.
Absolutely.
I'd love others to understand what they can expect if they do join your course or just go out there and learn.
Absolutely. I'm not really a big fan of testimonials, mainly because numbers without context don't really matter anything. Everyone is absolutely different, and that's why even the dojo, the way that we've built it is once someone gets in, they take an onboarding quiz, and depending on their level and what their background is, they will get a specific path. So everyone goes through the course in a different way. So if you're experienced, if you have already been creating content for years, you will get a much more expedited path as opposed to someone who is just starting out. Having said that, I have essentially been able to grow more than 7 million followers in the last 5 years for my students, and in all types of different niches, from rocket engineers to plastic surgeons. So I have found out that, again, most people, most experts, really are lacking one specific thing, and that's packaging. Because in today's world, it doesn't really matter how good you are at what you do if you cannot communicate what you do effectively. So you need to be an expert at what you do, and you need to be an expert at communicating what you do. So, for example, we had a specific case study. Her name is Rachel, and her handle on Instagram is Mrs. Botox. People can check her out. And she was a plastic surgeon, more specifically a beauty injector. And the issue with doctors is the fact that they have a lot of terminology. They are in an incredibly complex market, and they need to hold a specific standard of communication in order to not essentially misguide people. So it was really difficult to communicate and translate all of that technical knowledge into something that's incredibly practical and would work on social media. So Rachel was stuck for around 2 years before she reached out to me. And we did all the processes and all the things that we discussed in this podcast, which is first and foremost gain clarity. So go through the entire process, identify what's lacking, what are the gaps in your content creation journey, identify your traffic, identify your conversions, see what the issues are, we did a lot of competitive benchmarking, both inside and outside of the industry. We did a lot of profit optimization, and then we started testing out ideas. We started testing out a lot of different formats and just measuring everything, because I'm a data nerd. So I have all these cheat sheets for all of these different metrics that matter, because that's how you actually make decisions on social media and not just gamble. And then 2 months in, she went from 1,000 to 2,000. So she essentially doubled her following base after being stuck for 2 years. But in the next 30 days, she went from 2,000 to 102,000
Wow.
followers. So it was a massive exponential jump. And that's why I say that
Crazy.
the first 100 posts you make, they're not where you go viral. They're where you get good. And then afterwards, the results are exponential. So for me, lay down the foundations and then be able to take those exponential jumps. And what I'm the most proud of is that Rachel, after we ended up our 6-month collaboration, has gone on and went from 150,000. She's now at close to 300,000. So she has doubled her following yet again, even without my support. But most importantly, she has been able to build a business. She's traveling around the world. She's speaking on stages. She has opened up her own aesthetic clinic. So for me, that's really what.
Yeah, exactly what I was thinking. It's just, yeah, marketing can do incredible things for not just like if you're a personal, like if you're a creator, but just if you have a small business. Yeah.
It's exactly. And if someone in as complex of an industry as Rachel can do it, everyone can do it. There is really no excuse, and people who say that they don't really have time to create content are essentially lying to themselves. Time is never an issue. What is an issue is processes or lack of thereof, and making essentially choices that are keeping you time poor, because you are either resource poor or time poor. And if you're both, something needs to change, obviously. But if you're time poor, there's so many things that you can do in order to optimize your process, delegate, go through the Eisenhower matrix, understand and gain clarity on your content creation process.
Harry, I wanted to say just a huge thank you. And I know we've already run a little bit over time, but you've been incredibly insightful and just sharing everything from how you went from zero to, well, helping people change lives. I think that's truly rewarding.
It is.
So just thank you.
Thank you so much. And again, I truly wish to come from a place of abundance and to share as much information as possible. So if any of the listeners have any questions whatsoever, feel free to give them my email address. I always reply to my emails, and I always read all of my emails myself. So give them my personal email address. If someone has questions, have them send me a message, and I'd be more than happy to answer it. If not, I have made more than 2,000 posts completely for free on social. I have multiple freebies. So consume thoughtfully, apply, and I cannot wait to hear you.
Thank you so much.